I'm your host, Jess Carter, and on this episode of Data Driven Leadership, we're diving into developing a successful data strategy. We'll kick off this episode with our Solution on the Spot segment, where we bring in thought leaders and put them on the spot for some solutions that are relevant to today's data challenges. Afterwards, we've got two experts that are going to take a real-life example and break it down for us. Specifically, we're looking at the issue of what is a good data strategy and how do you get one? To help me solution on the spot today, we'd welcome John Roach, the president of Resultant. Hey, John.
Hey, Jess. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for joining us. Will you tell us, for those who don't know you and just see the title, tell us a little bit about John Roach and tell us why is John the guy to talk to about data strategy?
Sure. Let's see. So I've been a consultant now for the last 11 years. Before that, I worked in aerospace defense in very, very heavily data-driven roles there, essentially creating computer models of jet engines. And then, in the consulting world, I spent the first couple of years as a general management consultant, sort of dealing with, all things organizational strategy. I pivoted after that and started and built our data analytics practice from me to about 60 people. That's grown a lot since under our new leadership running that group. But throughout the course of that, I've probably run, conservatively 4 dozen data strategy projects and helped, I would guess, over 100 organizations align their technology strategy and data strategy to their organization's mission.
For this Solution on the Spot, what we're going to focus on is you've met a client, they're talking to you, you're getting familiar with them, and you ask them about their data strategy, and they say, what is that? Why do I need one? They don't have one. It's not top of mind. What do you do?
So if you hit the rewind button and go back, I'd say 10 or 15 years, organizations had people, organizations had processes, organizations had mission, and they had technology. And what that technology was really intended to do was make those processes and people more efficient. That's it. So I'd view those as primarily transaction-oriented systems. So think of going to the bank, the technology implemented the bank. It was really there to count numbers so the teller didn't have to write stuff down anymore. I think the revelation probably came, honestly, 7 or 8 years ago, that the insight trapped in those transactional systems could be used not only to inform improvements in efficiency in the organization, but there is so much insight in that data that can be used to drive not only how the organization does what it does, but also help the organization figure out how to do all of the things it does better and even inform the mission of the organization. So to kind of answer your question specifically, going into organizations, if they said, yeah, we don't really have a data strategy, that's really common. So if you're in that position, I wouldn't worry about it. What's honestly much more common is, we'll get a call to come in and help an organization with their data strategy. Turns out they have no idea what their actual strategy is as an organization. And in the course of assembling their data strategy, we often have to sort of suss out what's your mission as an organization, how do you differentiate in the market, what are the 3 or 4 things you have to do extraordinarily well as an organization to be able to accomplish your mission. And then we build the data strategy under that, supporting those 3 or 4 things that they have to do extraordinarily well.
Does everybody need a data strategy? Does every company need one?
Of course not.
Every market, every industry?
No, of course not. But if you want to be able to compete with your competitors, I think you do. I won't cite statistics. You can go, you can go Google the heck out of this. Lots of smart people have done research on this and concluded various numbers. Roughly, you will be 10% more efficient and 10% more effective in your market if you are using data as a strategic asset. So for all of the CFOs out there, who want, a 10% boost in growth or a 10% boost in margins. It's nothing to shake a stick at. Those are huge numbers.
Let me ask you this. When you look at a data strategy, maybe somebody does have a draft data strategy. How do you evaluate if it's any good? How do you evaluate the efficacy of a data strategy?
So if it starts with technology, it's not good. If it isn't very, very closely tied to the organization's mission, it's not good. And if they haven't contemplated organizational and cultural adoption of what they're doing, it's not good. So I'll say that in a much more positive way. Getting the data and technology stuff right is table stakes. You have to do that. Catering for the sensitivity of the data and ensuring that you are complying with all of the regulations around governing that data effectively and ensuring that you are appropriately using it. It's all table stakes. So given that all that stuff has to be done incredibly well, and you've got to be able to check all those boxes, I think what we've seen is the difference between a good data strategy and a not so good data strategy is a good data strategy is about the business. So it's really about how do I leverage the data assets that I have or I can go get to help the business accomplish its mission. If that's not the first 3 pages of a data strategy aren't about how the data is going to be used inside of the organization, if they're about the tools or if they're about the architecture, they really are going to have a hard time gaining long-term adoption of what they're trying to do across the organization. They might get the IT folks using it, but it will not get integrated in the business in a way that could create the transformation and improvement that it could and should across the business.
So that makes a lot of sense. So maybe I'm a client that we've been having this conversation. So I went back and I tied it to my business strategy that didn't exist, but I created one because of that great advice. And then, hey, I made sure that it was a good one. It wasn't just based on technology. Cool. My business and my leadership are still not buying it. So
Yep.
I'm kind of working my way through buy-in.
Yep.
What are some suggestions you have about forcing functions to get my company to buy into my data strategy?
Yep. It's a really good question. And, this sort of mindset shift in the role that data and technology should play in organizations, it is relatively new. So the problem you're describing isn't rare. What we found is it's impossible to get a data strategy right before you start building something. So to say that another way, we found that iteratively building both the strategy and the I'll just say like physical assets inside of the organization. So building out the technology, transforming processes, changing cultural mindsets. You can't write down a 50-page plan of your data strategy and then go execute it and expect that you're going to be able to build what you wrote down on paper. The reality is stuff you assumed will be one way will be a different way. The ways people will react to, respond to what you build will be different than you thought. The pace of adoption across the organization will be different than what you thought. And almost never have we seen the data not inform the organization's mission as well. So I'm saying is like the building out and driving insight from the data, we've almost always seen inform, if not the organization's mission, a little bit, all of the tactics underneath how they're accomplishing that mission. Those get transformed and formed by the data, and vice versa. It should be this like reciprocal cycle where you learn new things. The data changes how you think about the business. Because you've changed your thought about the business, it changes how you want to look at the data, on and on and on.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, I just want to play it back.
Yep.
Some of the things you're saying is it seems like you're threading a needle here between getting so academic and methodological that we got to build an 18-month plan and then execute it. You're saying, hey, Dial it back, look more iteratively. Don't just go rush around trying to get buy-in either. There's this like, hey, let's do some incremental testing, hypotheses, learn from the data, move. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So every organization is different. If you have a 10-person organization, everyone already heavily relies on technology. Everyone wants to rely on data, and you just don't have the infrastructure to support them being data driven. That's a very different scenario than I've got a big organization, lots and lots of different departments that are siloed, hundreds of systems, a culture that doesn't rely on data, doesn't really think of data as an asset, just wants to kind of do their jobs. Like those two journeys by necessity will be really, really different. In the former, just go build it and know that you're going to have to iterate and know that, of course, you've got to write things down and, of course, you've got to document everything. In the latter scenario, if you really dig into conversation with people, what you'll find is there's something inside of their department that is incredibly irksome to them. They'll say, oh my God, if we could only do like this thing, if we only knew like this answer, if I could only like give this person this insight at this time, we'd be so much better off. Start with that. Go solve that problem for them in as isolated of way as you can. And what you'll find is even if those were sort of the holdouts or at the tail of the adoption curve or the Luddites in the organization, their mindset can get transformed really quickly if you can address that like nagging pain for them. They'll become your biggest champions.
That's awesome. Okay, I got one more for you, and it should be a little bit fun. But like, what are the pitfalls? Where have you seen? You've done a bunch of these. Like everybody trips up at this point. I constantly have clients come to me and say, "Oh no, we're in this situation. What do we do?" Like, walk me through kind of some of those pitfalls.
I'm not going to talk about all the obvious ones that you see or that we've already talked about. So leading with technology or building a big data warehouse that nobody understands or having 2,000 tables in your data warehouse or something like that. Like all of those are common. Everyone understands those. I think the most common, least spoken about pitfall we've seen is you have an organization adopting data, getting really excited about the strategic use of data in the organization. They get some wins under their belt. They get people really excited about it. They get people using, name your favorite BI tool, and they get what we call dashboard sprawl. So they'll be really thoughtful about 4 or 5 visualizations or ways of extracting insight out of the data that inform the business unit or the business as a whole. Everyone gets really excited about those. They empower users, which I think is a great thing. They empower users to drive their own insight out of the data. And pretty soon, instead of 5 or 15 dashboards that are thoughtful, that it enables people to understand what's going on in the business, you have 2,000. And 2,000 dashboards is just as bad as 0. So I think the trick is empowering the business to really move toward a self-service model with trusted data underneath it, with data that is simple but detailed and specific enough that people can be creative with it and like drive answers to their questions. But put a layer of governance around what they're doing, such that you don't end up with a gajillion dashboards in production that all look at things from a slightly different angle. Get different answers about what was my revenue in quarter 1, because that will happen. So I think it is like the very last bit after you've done like the really challenging parts of gaining cultural adoption of data as a strategic asset. It's putting some governance around the push to production or productionization process of the data assets, such that you don't end up with just unwieldy amounts of dashboards.
That makes a ton of sense, and I understand and have seen that a bit in my experience too. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. The other main I'd say failure mode we've seen is data can and should drive insight for users. A dashboard is not always the best mechanism to drive that insight. So I think thinking about ways to meet business users or customers kind of where they are and the best mechanism for them to sort of use that insight at the time they need it.
Yeah.
That always isn't a dashboard. It could be completely obfuscated from them. It could be just transforming a workflow on demand based on the situation. It could be embedded inside of an application. So I think giving a nod toward and sort of critically thinking about, hey, if I were this person or asked this person or test some things out, what's the best way for me to understand and act on the insight at the time when I need it? And then build the underlying mechanism such that you are giving them that insight in the way that they're going to most effectively consume it.
The irk thing, I love the irk thing because you're right. If you walk around any business, somebody's wishing they had data to drive a strategic decision or to go drive their behavioral change, and they don't have it. And if you can just scratch that itch, huge buy-in, right? And then even on the dashboard sprawl, which I really like, I like the way you've coined that, or maybe it's been coined, but
no, it's mine.
It's like
it's absolutely mine.
Okay, got it. Okay, it's John Roach's, trademarked. There's this concept, right? It's like you're excited because everyone bought in, but we got a little bit narrow. It's like everyone just got really excited about the dashboards. And to your opinion, or to your point, to think about how do we drive improved workflow? How do we drive reduction in waste? How do we drive insights to the business of how we should adapt or change in the next 18 months? What our products should look like in 2 years in our industry based on our competitors and the need to change. And so I think to your point, if you can just get if you think the outcome of a data strategy is just dashboards, we've limited ourselves immediately. It's not a problem, but there's more to it than that, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. How hard is this?
Again, it sort of depends on the continuum organization that I laid out. To make dramatic improvements is really easy. To get it perfect is impossible. So,
You're here.
Yeah. So again, it depends on sort of that continuum of organization that I laid out. In the latter case, where you've got, a large, complex organization with lots of legacy systems and, forgive the description, but lots of legacy mindsets, to transform the entire organizational culture to be data-driven is really hard and is going to take a long time. And you've got to be very thoughtful about how you want to do that. And frankly, you've got to be very thoughtful about the ROI you're going to be able to drive from that. There may be parts of the business that, it might not be worth the lift, and parts of the business that is absolutely 100% worth the lift. So in that scenario, I would think about kind of tracing way back to the tactics that drive the organization's mission. I would ask, hey, of those 3 or 4 things that your organization has to do extraordinarily well, how well are you doing those things? And how can and should data play a role in you doing those things better? And if the answer is, hey, we're doing these things, doing one of these things really, really, really well, and I don't think data can help very much, I wouldn't focus your efforts there. If the answer, on the other hand, is, hey, there's this other thing we really don't have our hands around, and I think if we had, this insight at this point and this insight at this point, we could do this thing dramatically better, and it's really important to our business, focus efforts there. And sometimes those things are pretty darn easy to do. Sometimes they're harder. But I think, I heard Will Gray from Resultant talking about some data strategy work they'd done at clients, and the mindset he has in doing the work is there isn't an end point. It's just a journey, and the reality is technology changes. Your industry will change, your organization will change. Don't think of data strategy as a discrete starting point and end point. Your data strategy needs to be a living thing that evolves with your business, with the industry, with technology, with all of those things. It just needs to be one of the things you continue to maintain, monitor, enhance as you are doing that with your business.
Awesome. Okay. I got just a quick rapid one for you. John Roach, before you leave, what is one thing that is something that happens in your life every day that is, or something, a behavior that you do that is completely not data driven?
Making breakfast, I guess. I don't.
Every day. Do you eat the same thing every day?
Yes, I do.
What do you eat?
I eat 2 scrambled eggs and a piece of toast. Or this morning, since my beautiful wife made it, 2 scrambled eggs and a piece of zucchini bread.
Love it. Awesome.
It was fantastic.
Okay. All right. Hey, thank
Glass
you
of orange
for your
juice
time
and
today.
4 double espressos.
4 double espressos?
Yeah, normally.
Okay. You're surprisingly calm. All right. Thank you so much for your time today, John.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jess Carter, and don't forget to follow the Data Driven Leadership wherever you get your podcasts, and rate and review us to let us know how the data topics are transforming your business. We can't wait for you to join us for the next episode.